everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video review series, where I take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. This video will be reviewing the Monster Supplement Restless, a guide to lying Incorporeal Undead to rest, designed by VJ Harris for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. A review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you enjoy my videos, consider using my affiliate links for your DM's Guild shopping and supporting me via patreon.com/roguewatson. Shoutouts to my platinum patrons, Joe, Will, Tiny Dancer, Andy, Manuel, Basil, Tom, and Huskar124, and gold patrons, RPG Papercrafts, Charming Grenade, Pretty Boy Niva, Marcus Dave Vicente, Gilberto, Sean A.K., Cert 2B, Adam, Dead Lizard Lounge, Sam, Aras, Lumpy Spuds, Jerome, Fatboy619, Scalenia, and Nick. Thank you all very much for your support. Incorporeal. I'm going to mess that up several times. Ghosts! In other words, they exist in D&D. There are several different kinds. A few more were added in Mordenkainen's. You've got your straight-up ghost, you've got your specter, you've got your poltergeist, and I believe Mordenkainen's added the, statue-possessing Eidolon, the Elep, which just looks like a wraith, frankly, maybe more of a dusty wraith. Wraith is one of them also, which I think is definitely worth expanding on and exploring, especially because I'm just going to use the term ghost instead of incorporeal. Ghost, lowercase g, encompassing all the different kinds. They're just treated as monsters in terms of you can just hack and slash them, and they have maybe some extra resistances and obviously typically some unique abilities, but they're not different in the way that a horror movie treats ghosts much more differently. So, for example, in a movie with, zombie, I was going to say skeletons and ghouls, not so much, but zombie movies and stuff, there's things exist in the physical realm, they have rules that they play by, all those, basically monster movies done with a horror bent, but with ghosts, they don't play by any real rules. Now, the tricky thing is in D&D, you have to play by the rules, so you have to kind of create that, otherwise it becomes a haunting situation where the DM can just kind of make up their own rules, which I think is worth doing for sure. And that's something I would also like to see, is how to create truly haunted places that kind of, it's all about the atmosphere and the role playing and all of that. The ghosts themselves, they just have, kind of normal stat blocks with abilities. So what I was hoping that this product would do is expand on that and, draw from ghosts as we know them in pop culture, namely through horror films and stories, and adapt that to D&D. And a good example, which is done in here, is through the exorcism, which is a classic way of how to deal with ghosts and supernatural threats, because a lot of times you don't. That's pretty famous in horror. They usually create a franchise because you just cannot get rid of ghosts. They just stick around, they haunt, they're a pain in the ass. They linger in different objects or in different locations and that kind of thing, which is also what I was hoping this would do. Unfortunately, I think this is really it's a misstep. I really like the concept of focusing on ghosts. I think that is a great idea, and I want to see that done well. I don't think this isn't what I wanted. First of all, it's 50 pages long, but 40 of those 50 pages are stat blocks. And as you can see here from the table of contents, which, thumbs up for a table of contents, 95% of them are different swarms of creatures. And the reason for that is because in Chapter 2, which is the primary chapter, and we'll get to that in a second, is all about exorcism rules, which is good. That's something I wanted to see, expanded on, and that's something that I don't think has been ever done in a D&D rulebook in 5th edition, which is... And that helps make ghosts more unique as they are in, horror films, is to get rid of them, you have to go the extra mile and do the extra thing, which in this case is, basically a series of skill challenges. So I think that's a cool idea, but it basically boils down to the ghost summoning a bunch of swarms of creatures to deal with the threat as they're being excised. And I don't know why, especially why the ghost in particular. So different of the undead ghosts have the ability to animate and create different swarms, which I don't know. That's a poltergeist thing. I get that. That's the whole thing about poltergeist is they can animate objects and kind of jack with you that way. But I don't see why all the other creatures can also do that as part of their exorcism. It just feels, I don't know if lazy is the right word, but it's a weird way of saying that this is how every single ghost deals with the threat of being excised, is they can summon all these swarms. And that's what we're given for the bulk of this supplement, is all these additional swarms. And particularly the ghost, for some reason, uses a bunch of animals. Was that ghost a druid? Like, I don't know why. And frankly, we already have a lot of good swarms in the monster manual, and you can take easily one of those swarms and apply it to whatever other kind of similar, spiders and bats and things. You can switch those out for other similar creatures. But a swarm, what I've understood a swarm is, it's a collection of creatures that are too tiny to individually attack, for the most part, and they are balled up in this just kind of chaotic danger ball, and you have to deal with that threat. And usually it's a swarm of insects. I think swarm of bats is a thing you can use also. The classic or you could use a swarm of birds for the same reason that's used in the birds. What this does is like a swarm of baboons, or a swarm of boars, or a swarm of wolves. Those aren't swarms. Those are like stampedes or packs. Like, we already have, these creatures already have pack tactics for a lot of cases. You could have stampede rules, which I think would be very useful, but those aren't really so I don't get that at all. I didn't like seeing a bunch of just regular beasts being turned into even if it's like a gargantuan swarm of axe beaks. Like, how does that even work? And the mechanics are, it's bizarre to me. So I think that was a weird thing, in addition to having it be weird that all of these different ghosts and things can just do swarms. Animate objects is a thing. That's a spell. It's got its own rules. You can even animate different kinds of objects, so we didn't necessarily even need the other kind of things, which is what I think the poltergeist can do, which are swarms of books and papers and there's like chairs and tables. Like, that's fine. The most interesting one is probably these spell books that are given, which is just floating books that can cast spells, which is kind of neat. I think that's a cool idea for I think it's the Alep that can do that. But for the most part, and this is 75% or more than that of this supplement are these stat blocks that I don't think are very useful. So that's a weird there's like 3 of them that are, let's see, is it at the end? That are actually, here we go. Just leveled up versions of some of the ghosts. So Spectre, Will-O-Wisp, and Wraith are given like higher version levels. That's fine, but what I would have loved to see is the different varieties of ghost. Because, again, looking at film, there's so many different kinds to draw from that would represent probably different stat blocks, but more importantly, different tactics, different haunts, different situations. I mean, I just listed some in the review. There's The Shining, The Grudge, The Conjuring, Insidious, Poltergeist, obviously, Babadook. You could, Ghostbusters. There's all these different pop culture films you could use. There's the classic, Sanitarium haunted ones. It's like, give me that in rule form. And a lot of what you would have to do is create the haunting locations or objects, because that's a big part of what ghosts are all about, and then create why these different kinds of varieties of ghosts have these different tactics and these different backgrounds. It kind of plays with that a little bit at one point at the end of, and I know I'm bouncing around, but I really, that stat block thing is such a big part of this supplement. At the end of chapter 2, it mentions the ties that bind, which is a couple D4 tables for some of the ghosts, and that's something that I would have liked a whole chapter about that. Like, give me what kind of different ghosts there are and what their tragic backgrounds are and how that, creates their different tactics and their different haunts and situations and how to get rid of them. Like, that is what I wanted this to be the expansion of. The exorcism rule is the biggest part of this supplement. So, all right, I'll go over chapters 1 and 2 briefly. Chapter 1 is fine. It's just expanded descriptions and flavor texts of all of the incorporeal undeads that exist in D&D. That's cool. That's fine. It's well written. I like the flavor text. None of it is technically useful mechanically, but it's nice to get. I think this is a good opening chapter. It's a good start, and it expands on all that information. Good, fine. But then we start running into some problems. The order is fine. The Kelemvor for being anti-undead, that's fine. Exorcism is the biggest new rules system here, and it's super underdeveloped because, again, I think it's a cool idea. I think that's a neat concept, is to turn dealing with ghosts into a entire quest line, because that's what makes ghosts unique, is that you can't just beat them down with swords and spells and they're done with. I think creating this extra step is it could be very compelling and satisfying. It boils down to a skill challenge, which a lot of people are very divisive over skill challenges, but even then it's very, like it says, you can each turn make their action to make a check using one of the 3 formulas from step 4. I'm not seeing any formulas in step 4. I don't know what skill checks you have to make. I assume religion checks, but that's not listed here. The only table we get is the DC and the CR level, but I think this is even tied to, it mentions that you can make the charisma saving throw is for the ghost E, the ghost being exorcised. And it mentioned, and what I was hoping is a step-by-step process. So, like, in other words, during the first round of combat during the exorcism, once it starts, it has all this prep work and binding circle and all that's fine, but then once it starts, break it down for me. Okay, the creature goes on initiative 20, it mentions that, but then it just says summons swarms of creatures or just tries and destroys the building. And then it doesn't mention anything about how does it try to destroy the building? Is there some kind of check that it makes to do that? Is this just all up in the DM's air? And why do all of them summon creatures? I don't think that's right. I think the poltergeist would, but I don't. Maybe there's some kind of certain ghost that can summon. Are tied to like beetles or spiders or something that can do that. Or maybe some of them, manifest portals to hell and things happen, or skeletons come out, or zombies or something. Like there should be different varieties and versions that are happening, and definitely create some kind of wisdom saves or constitution saves where things are happening. Obviously The Exorcist is the main movie where I'm pulling this from, but there should be saves against madness and exhaustion to look at the way in which I'm picturing the old priest and the young priest going through the motions of becoming mentally taxed from doing all this and emotionally drained. None of that is provided here, which is a shame because I think this is a good idea. I like the fact of using exorcisms against D&D ghosts. I think that could be a fun side quest. Even if your players aren't necessarily want to be Ghostbusters or anything, that just is a fun side jaunt, and there's information to be found there, and you have to kind of research the creature and find its anchoring object. You can make that a whole thing, which again I would love if that was in here, but it's not. But at the very least, give me some better rules on how to actually do the exorcism, because I think it really drops the ball on telling me, the DM, like the step-by-step process of how to do it. And I feel like different ghosts should definitely have different kinds of exorcism. They shouldn't all just be summoning creatures during their exit. Like the poltergeist can, that's fine, that's its whole deal, but I don't think the others would do that at all. So I disagreed with that assertion completely. And that's pretty much it for the supplement. There's a 3rd chapter which involves, if you're a necromancer, then you can kind of wrest control away. Although I always thought of necromancers as more corporeal undead, raising zombies and skeletons rather than dealing with ghosts. Ghosts always seem like they're their own thing. But the information is there. But it's all kind of underdeveloped, and it's a shame that most of the supplement focuses on all these swarms, a lot of which are kind of goofy. Like I said, swarms of apes and things that a swarm of rocks. That's okay, fine. That's just mostly what this is. And also, you can tell here there's no artwork throughout. I do like the cover page a lot. I love this art right here. I wish D&D had more of this kind of comic book style art, although this is quite bloody for this art style, but I like the cover, but there's no art whatsoever. And if you're doing a monster supplement, there's got to be some art in there in the stock, right? Give me that Banshee stock art or something. Just throw that in here. Just do something to make it break up this text a little bit. It's got the professional layout, which is fine. It's got all the right, the tables and the font and all that, the subheadings, that all looks fine. But without the art, it really is quite noticeable. All right, let's go over my pros and cons for Restless. Pros, dozens of new swarm stat blocks. I appreciate that there are some, I mean, it's going to be in my con also, but there are some good swarms in there. The books, papers, rocks, pigeons maybe, maggots. There's swarms of seahorses. That's probably not one of them that I would use too much, but I'll include that one as a pro at least. And pro, I thought the first chapter was pretty solid. The expanded descriptions for Incorporeal Undead was very well written, and I enjoyed reading, diving into it a bit more. I also like the flavor text, italicized at the beginning. I thought that was really nice. Cons, at least half the swarms don't make any sense. Swarms of apes, swarms of wolves, etc. Those are not what I consider swarms at all. I think that's not how swarms are supposed to be used, and it's just, I don't want to see the supplement just focusing on that. Cons, I think the exorcism rules are underdeveloped, which is a bummer because I think that's a very good thing to add to D&D, and I want to see it added as a potential way to deal with ghosts and make ghosts more unique, but this ain't it. And the other con is no artwork. The cover is good, but there's no artwork whatsoever in these pages, which is always a bummer. Final verdict. Expanding on ghostly undead is a great idea, but Restless's exorcism rules are underdeveloped, and new stat blocks focus more on conjured swarms than the ghosts themselves. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson, and you can follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel. Thank you.